but first I just want to thank Sam Brown, who is in the hallway. I don't know if Sam's not listening, but Sam is our office manager for UC Cooperative Extension, and for Paul and Sherry Rowan for helping with dinner this evening, so can we give them a round of applause? So I know many of you, my name is Tracy Shore, and I am the Livestock and Natural Resources Advisor for UC Cooperative Extension. I actually grew up in Butte County and went to school at Chico State and also at UC Davis, and have been up here now for, I think we're working on 8 years, and actually spent my summers growing up in Plumas and Sierra County as a kid. And so it's a pleasure to get to work with all of the ranchers and natural resources managers in this area. So to start off with, you guys all should have gotten a blue sheet. So we hope that you will fill this out. This helps me guide our future programming and also give feedback into the conversation and where to go in the future as we deal with challenges of wolves and other topics that come before us in this county, like grasshoppers and drought and all the other challenges. For those of you who are livestock producers, a number of you have experienced losses. If you need help with your depredation reporting, I'm happy to help you, or Tina Saitone, who right here from UC Davis has helped a number of ranchers already. And so if you have any questions on that paperwork or completing it, please feel free to reach out to one of us or both of us to help you get through that process. So tonight's focus is to hear from the California Wolf Project that is based at UC Berkeley, with Arthur Middleton and Kaggie Orrick are here to join us to talk about some of the research that they have been doing here in Plumas and Sierra County, as well as across the North State. So they're going to talk about their wolf camera trapping, and so those cameras that are across the forest and looking at population data, their cluster investigations of where there have been depredations from wolf packs, as well as some overview of the last pilot program for compensation that the California Department of Fish and Wildlife has. So I will turn it over to Arthur and Kaggie. And so they're going to present, and then we will have time for question and answers as we wrap up. There is a microphone if you feel like you start losing your voice.
Okay.
The gym echoes pretty well, so.
Well, thanks Tracy, and thanks to you all for coming out and for talking with us this evening. We're going to tell you a little bit about what we're doing, but we're also just happy to hang around for a while and have conversations. I just thought we'd start with just a little background about who we are. So I'm Arthur Middleton. I'm on the faculty at UC Berkeley in the College of Natural Resources. I'm a professor of wildlife management and policy. I have kind of came up as a wildlife ecologist by training, and have also played some government advisory roles. I worked a lot with the state of Wyoming on kind of similar issues, worked in the U.S. Department of Agriculture on similar issues and questions. I have about 20 years working on large carnivores, big game, interactions with livestock, related issues, mostly in Wyoming, also to some degree in Patagonia, and now here. I came to California about 9 years ago, was tied up with work in other places, and for some reason it seemed like a good idea for my first project in California to be this. I sometimes question whether that was a wise conclusion, but you know, here we are, and this is worthwhile work. My role on this project is as a co-principal investigator with a colleague who's not here, named Justin Brashares. And the two of us are sort of providing general oversight, but we had the great fortune to be able to bring on a wonderful team, including Kaggie, who you're going to hear from briefly now, as well as a number of others. And we'll talk a little bit more about the team later.
Yeah. Hi everyone, my name is Kaggie Orrick. I am the project director of the California Wolf Project. I got my PhD at the Yale School of Environment specifically looking at human-predator conflict. I have 15 years worth of conservation management and research experience, all of which, or most of which, has been in Southern Africa. So I look a lot at human-wildlife conflict with lions, with leopards, elephants, not predators, but also conflict species, wild dog. And I'm originally from California, so kind of coming back here has been a dream of mine to be closer to my family, and also seeing this conflict and seeing so many parallels in the work that is being done in Southern Africa and other places that could be applied here in California was really important to me as well. I also I've also had a whole entire team that is with us for the California Wolf Project as well. We have 2 postdoctoral scholars that have been looking at community ecology as well as livestock mitigation strategies and conflict there as well. And we have field techs in the team in the field as well, and media specialists to help us kind of share our findings and make sure that we're coming to events like this all of the time. And kind of giving you preliminary updates as well. So our media specialist is actually here right now. She's videoing this in part because we saw that so many people were asking for, who couldn't be able to make it tonight, to have something to watch, to understand. So it's just focused on us. It's not focused on you guys. She might be taking a couple of photos in the back as well. And if you do not want your photo to be taken, just let us know and we'll make sure that we don't do that. But thank you.
So we wanted to just say a little bit about sort of what we are and what we're not. There's a lot of different entities like in this space, right? Having to do with wolves and livestock. I guess briefly, our team, is just a range of folks with wildlife ecology, wildlife conflict, a little bit of social science, human dimensions expertise, all of us got into the field because we're interested in wildlife. We like wildlife, right? But we're not wildlife advocates, right? We're not here to be wolf advocates. I think a lot of us equally were drawn into the field because we're interested in wildlife that interact with people and how to solve problems, around the challenges that can arise. There are some key relationships that are worth, teasing apart here. We are not the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, right? But we work closely with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife in hopes that over time we can, provide useful information and iteratively improve wolf management in California. We are not Cooperative Extension, although we're in the family of UCA&R with Cooperative Extension. It's been a great relationship for us to increasingly lean into, and Tracy's fantastic and is helping us in all kinds of ways. That's a relationship that helps us get the word out, but then over time helps us start to adapt the research to be more relevant and more helpful. And so we're in that back and forth with Cooperative Extension. So we have Tracy, but also some great extension advisors in Lassen and Siskiyou and others. So there's a great group there that we're starting to work more and more closely with. Before we jump into sort of project, what the project is and a little bit of what we're starting to find. We know we're here in the midst in Sierra Valley of a significant challenge, particularly for livestock producers and their families. Sierra Valley has had particularly severe wolf predation on livestock. I have worked in many states in the West, and this has been pretty serious, and so we recognize that. And I think we have the humility to know that our research isn't going to solve that challenge, but we're trying to share knowledge that can help provide some context and resources to the folks who are working on addressing this challenge. And hopefully we can help gather some lessons learned about interventions that are tried, how wolves respond to those, and more, to sort of better prepare over time for the next round. Because the thing about wolves is they hang around and they are good at recolonizing the same places over time. And so this is going to be a long-term issue, would be my prediction. And so hopefully we can be helping to just generate some useful insight over time, and through conversations with a lot of folks in places like this, keep adapting that work to be more useful. So I'm going to turn it over to Kaggie and just talk for a little while about like what the project actually is. And I guess as I do that, I'll just say, how far into this are we? A couple of years? A year and a half?
A year and a bit.
Time has been a blur, but it still feels a little bit like we're at the beginning. And so in terms of like why we've been working on the kinds of topics and questions that we have, there was a bit of a vacuum of just basic knowledge and understanding about wolf ecology. And so the way we started this was to say, let's sort of begin with kind of a snapshot and a set of baseline studies so that we can begin to take deeper dives on some of the pressing questions that people have, or some of the more California-specific, issues and challenges. So with that, I'm going to jump over there.
Great. If everybody has gotten a handout, if not, lean over to your neighbor. But exactly as Arthur said, so we started in June of 2024, so we're about a year and a half into our work. Our funding ends in June of 2026, and so we are kind of coming up to this timing where we are going to start reporting out a lot of our findings, especially our different objectives that we have from this sheet. I think Arthur kind of touched on this, but so wolves, the first pack in California was established in 2015. So it's been 10 years since wolves have been in the area. However, CDFW has been working on the management side of this, not necessarily the research. So while there have been some researchers that have been doing some work, Tina being one of them, this really was trying to get an idea and trying to be more of a research branch to CDFW and kind of look at some of the data, not only historical, but just, again, this snapshot of California. And that's when we can then brainstorm about how we want to move forward. So figure 1 is just talking about the minimum counts and numbers of packs from 2015 to 2024. We know that this number is probably higher. This is a minimum count. This is directly from CDFW. And all we're trying to do here is just demonstrate that these numbers are only going to increase. And so some of the work that we've been doing is looking at habitat suitability, dispersal models. How quickly is this population going to increase based off of how management has gone so far? And we know it's only going to increase. So some of this snapshot that we're doing right now and some of this work is to better inform how we can manage moving forward, continue to do research, and inform not only everyone in this room, but policymakers, other scientists, etc. So I'm going to walk through a little bit about our different objectives and kind of our preliminary findings, and then we can open up the conversation to larger questions. I'm sure that people have a lot of questions that are not necessarily directly related to our research, which we're happy to try and field. If people want to get really nitty-gritty into the research too, you guys can always reach out to us. Our email's on here, and I can also try and find that information for you if I can't answer it directly. So kind of the first snapshot that we're trying to do, we are looking at the CDFW GPS collars. So we have had access to the historical collars as well as the current collars. And what we're trying to do here is just understand resource selection functions, what habitats are they using, home range sizes, how that might change in denning season versus non-denning, what habitats they might use, how that overlaps with native prey, how that overlaps with livestock. So our GPS collars, we've been working at home range size. In figure 3, you can just see, for example, in the home ranges for denning is much smaller than those that are in post-denning and non-denning. something that we can use to inform how wolves might be moving across the landscape and how they differ for different seasons. But we're not only interested about just collared wolves. So we have a camera trap grid. It's 200 cameras across Northern California. We've been told it's the largest camera trap array, but we're not necessarily sure, in California. But it basically starts north of 80 and then east of the 5 all the way up to the Oregon border. And this is in partnership with UC Davis. UC Davis also has some cameras out there. But this is to get a sense of not only, again, I said the collared wolves and where wolves are now, but also to get a sense of where wolves are going to be and how they're spreading. So this camera trap array was designed not only in the home ranges of the current collared wolves, but also 30 kilometers outside of that. You might look at this and be like, I already know that there are wolves outside of this area. And that's because this was a snapshot of 2024 and they've been spreading. But this is going to give us a better sense not only of wolves kind of moving out in this area, but the cameras are not just getting wolves, they're also getting these native prey. They're looking at deer, they're looking at elk, they're also looking at competitor species. So mountain lions, black bears, and all of these things are extremely important to understand how wolves are impacting an ecosystem. So the camera trap grid is going to give us that better sense of how they're co-occurring with other species across the landscape. With that, camera traps are all well and good, but we also have access to CDFW's elk and deer collar data. So we're getting, not only are we getting the snapshot with the cameras, but we're also getting this more fine scale information with deer and with elk, exactly how they're selecting for different habitats in wolf areas versus non-wolf areas. And so this is going to give us, again, a better sense of how adding an additional predator to the landscape might impact prey populations. The thing that I think most people are going to be interested in, I'm most interested in, is diet. So we're doing two different things with diet. So the first is that we have collected a number of scat, almost 400 in summer of 2024, 230 in the winter of 2025. I have seen, from starting this project, I have seen a wild wolf once on this landscape. I have collected more than 150 scat of wolf on this landscape. So we're spending a lot of time looking for scat, and we're going to do something very similar to what Tina has done, which is the DNA metabarcoding. For summer of 2024, that was across 5 different packs. For the winter, it was across 3 different packs. And what we're looking for there is the different DNA of different prey species, not only native prey, but also, again, livestock. We're working on these preliminary results. There have been supply chain demands that have backed this up. We've just gotten results from summer of 2024. You all are not going to be surprised. There's a high amount of cattle in there. And so we're really hoping that we can kind of turn around that information and start sharing that with CDFW internally, but then also with all of you relatively quickly. And that's going to be able to give some sort of insight into adding to what Tina has done, adding to what others have done, and looking at the diet of wolves on the landscape. We have complemented this with cluster investigations. So cluster investigations involve CDFW increasing the frequency of their collar intervals. So on a regular day, the collar frequencies take 4 pings a day. It's also kind of at weird intervals and times, but there's only 4 points per day. What we do in the months of August and the months of February is that CDFW will increase the frequency of that collar. So in August, it takes it every 30 minutes. In February, it takes it every 2 hours. And then we have a field team that goes out. Every time there's more than 1 ping in the same spot, our team is going to go out there and look and try and determine what the wolves were doing there. And that could be something, they might be just moving across the landscape, they might be resting, they might have a rendezvous site, but what we're looking for are kills, are looking for carcasses in general. And that's because wolves don't only just kill on the landscape, they're also scavengers. And so what we're trying to determine at those clusters, at those carcasses, is whether they've killed that individual or if they're feeding off of it and they're just scavenging. So this is some of the results that we found from that. I want to preface this with, we did not do cluster investigations this summer in Bamseo. We can talk about that a little bit more. The presence of CDFW on the landscape and everything else that was going on, we weren't able to collect that information. So these results do not include what I know has been just an incredible amount of depredations.
The school's doing it all fine, so.
In the Bay Area, that means there's an earthquake, but I guess it's just a school.
Water issues are more.
So for that information, like we have visited over 500 clusters, and that have resulted in 311 clear events and cluster investigations, and that included 264 clusters this summer. The findings of the investigation reports are in this figure 4 on the back. You will not be surprised when you look at that figure B that we're finding a lot of cattle in their diet, especially compared to deer, elk, and other. We are seeing that there are differences in the seasons. There's differences in February versus August. That's really important, and that's very interesting as well. And we're also finding that they're doing a number of different things. You can see that a number of the clusters that we visited are killed or carcasses, but they're also moving, having resting sites, etc. We're also finding that these carcasses are in different types of habitats in the summer versus the winter, and this kind of aligns again with the differences of cattle versus native prey that we're seeing in the summer versus winter. So carcasses during the summer are primarily occurring in wetlands, mixed conifer and hardwood forests. That is normally where we're going to be seeing cattle, so that kind of fits and makes sense. In the winter, it's mostly in open habitat where we're normally seeing deer. So these cluster investigations are going to be paired with our diet investigations, because with the DNA metabarcoding, with microscopy, just looking at scat, we're not going to be able to determine if it's scavenged versus if it's been killed, and so this is hopefully giving us some insight into that. Next, talking about livestock depredation patterns. So CDF, we've been using the livestock depredation investigations that CDFW has, and we are evaluating how deer and cattle densities influence the depredations, as well as other environmental factors in each denning, non-denning, post-denning period. Again, this figure is already so out of date. We did not have access to all of the information from Sierra Valley to add to this, but you can see that depredations by wolf population per year is only up till 2024, and this map that shows depredations by county is obviously out of date again for everything that's been happening in August, or happening all year here with you guys. So I just want to point that out. We know that we're trying to incorporate these most recent depredations into our model. We've taken one snapshot, but we know that we need to update now that so much has happened, especially in this valley. The last objective that we have here is evaluating the pilot compensation program. So the pilot compensation program was looking at those 3 different prongs: direct loss, conflict mitigation, and pay for presence. And so those livestock producers that have been able to get compensation during that first phase, during that first pilot program, we sent out a questionnaire to evaluate the effectiveness of that pilot compensation program, how people felt about it, trust within CDFW, how easy it was to kind of to use. And so the results of that have been back too. We have shared our findings with those who have taken the questionnaire. So there was 36 livestock producers that had compensation through that pilot program. We were able to get a questionnaire from 26 of them. So this was just a snapshot again of those 3 prongs. Kind of key findings, and we can talk more about this if you want. Key findings: non-lethal deterrence helped reduce conflicts and increase resilience. Pay for presence reduced conflicts but did not increase resilience. So as we start talking about what the next phase of conflict mitigation might look, our compensation might look like, starting to look at these numbers, having discussions with livestock producers about what might be useful is going to be key in that. The other thing that we did was look at trust. It is not surprising to all of you, but trust for CDFW was the lowest out of all of the organizations and institutions that we interviewed. Cooperative Extension was the highest, and I think that speaks a lot to people like Tracy and others who are spending so much time in kind of creating this communication and unity. So I think that that goes a long way, and I think also universities were also high up there. I think that has a lot to do with TINA as well. So I think that there is a lot of interest and conversations that can be had around trust, and therefore who we trust to get communication and information from, and how that might look moving forward as we start thinking about next phases. So those were our 7 objectives. We are also supported by National Geographic as well. National Geographic has given us some funding. So we are also looking at storytelling and outreach. So we are trying to increase public perception, talking about the impact that wolves might have on livestock producers, especially to an urban public who might not necessarily understand or know what's happening, and how much negative impact wolves coming back into the state have impacted people. We have given presentations like this as well to Fish and Game, to cattlemen, etc., especially in Siskiyou and Plymouth area. So we want to continue doing that and having events like this. We have a resources tab on our website. We also have an e-newsletter if people want to sign up for that. If you just email on the front page and just say that you'd like to sign up for our newsletter, you're more than welcome to do so. Malia's also been working on this really amazing work called Living with Wolves, and she's been doing an interview series. Right now it's just focused up in Siskiyou, but getting a snapshot of livestock producers, UC Extension up there, the Wolf County Liaison, trying to get all of these different perspectives of impacts of that people are having with wolves. And so with that, I want to open it up to questions, but I just want to highlight again, our funding comes directly right now from CDFW and National Geographic. We would love to expand our work. We'd be interested to hear what people might necessarily want, what things people want to have us continue to do, what seems effective and useful, what doesn't. And we'd also like to diversify our fundings so that we don't necessarily rely on we can diversify our fundings and focus on different things that people are interested in us doing. And that might include doing more work with cooperative extension, working more with mitigation tools, conflict reduction strategies. So with that.
I may add a couple more things and then we'll do questions, which is, I'm going to state something quite obvious here, but California is really different. Okay, there's a lot of folks that I interact with who sort of come to look at the wolf issue through the lens of things that they've read or seen or heard from other places. Yellowstone, for example. I've worked there. This isn't Yellowstone. I think it's just about as cool and in many ways beautiful, but it's different. California has a lot of people. It's a more settled, landscape, a huge road network, a lot of working plants, a very significant. I think a lot of people don't realize this about California, but livestock population that's distributed across the state. California has had, have you heard about any of these fires? California has had enormous, fires that have affected the forests that, influence the prey of things like wolves or the movements of wolves. California starts with a different prey situation than many of the other western states. I've worked in Cody, Wyoming for many years. I still do. And in the valley where I have a place and stay in the summer, there's 6,000 elk that can distract the wolves from, you know, other activities that involve livestock sometimes. And California has, you know, a slowly recovering elk population that's not necessarily, the thrust of which isn't where the wolves are to a significant degree. There's a lot of local variation, including low numbers of deer in, you know, some of these areas. So I think my point here is just to say it's hard to, we can't sort of pick up models easily from other places and put them down here. And that's frustrating, actually, because that slows the process of, you know, of kind of dialing in the some of the science and the management. But it also speaks, I think, to why in this next round of work, you know, what we're going to be thinking about is, okay, we're starting to see some of these relationships emerge between wolves and native prey. We need to dig more deeply into what is going on there, how fire in some of these landscapes is affecting that relationship. So, you know, I just kind of want to offer that of, we all have to, I think, recognize that it's a species that occurs in a bunch of places, but we're now trying to figure it out in a different, you know, context, and we're grappling with that as are others. With that said, are we ready to just,
Yeah.
yeah, just